your license for your own software, but you might be using components underneath it. And there are some restrictions about this. There are some conditions that you need to understand. And the same goes for HTML, which is actually what I recommend for people to use as a standard. But this is just the beginning. Then we get into a more fuzzy slide, the way you see it right here. And things start to get a bit more variables. I mean, you can actually, I want to target my software to be Apache. But if you do so, then you have to be careful about the other licenses that you're adopting. Or if you're having your architectural discussion, I mean, you see a lot of brands and logos and stuff that they have there. But even those things, even if they are under a GPL license, for example, their understanding of GPL might be a little bit different from yours. I mean, it's all a bit of a work that starts to increase in terms of compliance, in terms of complexity. I just keep here the WordPress part of the logo because I find it interesting that they now recommend all the work built upon WordPress to also be GPL, which is a commendable move, but it's still so much of a discussion about it. Then you go for development. In here, I'm actually putting a very nice way of how I write my own code. But most importantly, what we usually do when we are in front of a computer is that we are stuck in a problem. And yeah, always good code. And we don't really, well, if you get stuck, what do? You go to the internet, you find a solution, and then you put it in your code. It runs, and it's great. But I mean, from a copyright perspective, imagine it like the poem of someone else. You're taking that piece of code and text that someone else wrote, and then you're applying it inside your own text, but you're not really giving much of an attribution. You're not giving a copyright. And if people later use tools to detect these snippets, they might actually not discover where it comes from. Just for some basic information, this is a term that people don't usually talk so much, so often, but in the compliance world, provenance is the art of discovering where the software comes from. So they have people that they usually, when they give a snippet of code, they try to discover where it comes from. They try to see exactly what's the source, so that they can, for example, ask permission for the person to use it. Because many times you see code sharing around the world, but you don't really know who was the author. Might be good, might not be good, but we also like to, at least from what I see from the people with whom I work, they don't want conflicts. They want to actually ask permission for people. They want to actually make things okay. This is usually for government institutions. And this is also my recommendation if you're developing code of a good way of solving this issue. It's very simple. I'm just putting Java here, but you can put some annotations explaining where the code came from, who was the author that you believe it to be, and the date when you did it. It might not even be the more accurate information, but this is the information you have. This is the place where you took the code from. And it's already a great help, because when you're doing a provenance analysis and you find the same snippet on 30 different projects, I mean, it's just crazy. How can you tell where it came from? And if you're more conservative, you can't even use a snippet. You have to remove it completely. So this is already a very big help. Then we were talking about the curve, if you remember. Now we are getting close to the packaging. And on the packaging, this is the more, I would say it's a more serious portion. All of it is serious, but this one is really the one where you're going to be preparing the software to be made available to others. Usually, you try to remove all non-compliant issues that you find. And by non-compliance, I don't mean legal from a point of view. I mean things that we consider a risk of not really being correct. Both from an ethical view, you can name it, but if you find something that you don't like it, then you try to put it with the yellow, try to put it with the red, try to put it with the green. And if you get to this point and you're still finding red dots there, it's not a good thing. And this is a screenshot from a real project. But the more scary stuff is that it's not just one, but there were 500 components in this project. And as you can see, you find a lot of reds already. And these are things on the last stage that you still need to re-engineer, to correct. And so imagine how difficult now it gets to tell all these people, to tell all these managers and so on that, well, we can't use this piece of free software because it's not so compliant. Imagine what's their answer. And so it's not so it's not so easy sometimes to get an agreement or get things to be done correctly. But most of the cases it is possible if you work in advance, if you have some experience. And the good thing is that you get your car ready with all the software inside, and then you can walk out the door and start to be used by people. So this is the good thing about software, is that free software also accelerates things to be developed. And you get your car ready. Hopefully in a year it will be an electrical one. But then, after your car is released, it goes outside of the door and people start to use it. But what you also notice when things start to be used by other people that are not inside the company, for example, they start to ask questions. I mean, where is the compliance in that? Few people know, but nowadays when you buy a car, it's full of software. I'm not kidding about this. And much of it is also free software. But if you notice, even with a cell phone, when you get your own cell phone, you don't really get a file or a document saying, well, you have X, Y, Z licenses inside of it. You don't really ask for this information. It's not so available. The only compliance that you see from most of the manufacturers is still a slide like this one, completely white. I mean, you don't see so much. You have to ask questions. So it starts the process of discovery. This is, for people that come from Germany, this is actually more or less common. They start to see a lot of hackathons. We start to break apart software compiled or in source and try to see where it comes from. What are the licenses applicable? What can you discover about them? And this is not really the best way of doing it, because this is one of my analyses, one of my logs, because I want to track all the things that I'm doing, so that if I'm wrong, someone can correct it. But that's the thing, I can be wrong. I don't know where the code came from. I mean, we are talking about provenance and compliance, and many times I'm just doing assumptions, trying to discover where the code is coming from, and this is not so good. This is not really the correct way of doing things. So, to solve these kind of situations, there is actually a nice standard already being proposed. It's called SPDX, so the Standard Package Data Exchange. This comes from the Linux Foundation. It's being worked in a way that we can actually use it to describe the licenses, so that when someone is creating a piece of software, they can actually pick on this SPDX format, describe all the licenses. But before one starts to think that it's a very complicated format, I actually include a screenshot of it. It's nothing more than a text file, where each line has a meaningful data that anyone can read. There is also the XML version for automated tools, but I'm just putting here the version that I prefer to use in my own daily cases. So as you can see, it has information about the checksum. It has small information about the file, and already has an information about the license that someone, a human for example, has been analyzing inside the file. So if you remember before, I was doing the things manually, trying to discover them. This is actually the way that I'm now using to document the licenses inside the software. And also a very brave effort by the SPDX group that I noticed is that they set up a reference point. So before, there was no common language to describe the licenses. I mean, if you're using GPL version 2, or if you're using a GPL version 2 or above, or if you're using, for example, any other kind of license that is more popular to find, we were all trying to describe it in different ways. There wasn't really a common vocabulary for describing the languages. So I would recommend going to their website and taking a look, because it's really worth your time. Even if you don't adopt the SPDX, just adopting a standard list of license descriptions is already very good, and a very good step. And one of the things when you start using SPDX, imagine it a bit like HTML for the web. So SPDX tries to do the same with licensing. Once you have a standard and people start to understand it the same way, we can start to do metrics, we can start to do visualizations about the data. We can start, for example, to look at SPDX file and see which files have already been analyzed and which files are still missing to be analyzed. You can, for example, make a list of the copyrights inside a given package. Believe me, this is much better than someone just giving a piece of software to you and say, okay, this is GPL. And then you ask, but what kind of GPL? So it avoids a lot of miscommunication that exists between the both parts. We really need to know, and we want to know what we are using so that we can also pass this information to other people. But all that I'm showing here is things that can be done manually, but we also have a lot of tooling already available. And I'm just putting tooling here that costs nothing, that you can use already. So for example, on the SPDX org, you already find many tools to use from the command line. Also to convert spreadsheets into the SPDX format, if that's what you're using. And I'm also listing a page online that you can also go and try to make an SPDX package out of it. The only downturn is that it accepts only small files because it's uploading things to their server. On triple check, we are also making an SPDX file available. It's actually something that we are using and keep on improving. So, as a proof of concept, we are actually picking on the ReactOS project for 2004. This is our compliance project. ReactOS, you can say, come on.
3 minutes.
Okay. So this is what we are actually doing as a proof of concept and picking on their source code. And it's quite big. I mean, it's 18,000 files. I can tell you, for me, when I'm looking for the analysis and trying to do it, I try to do it on time, but it still takes my time. So I hope that next year I can show you the good results out of it. In terms of reading, I recommend, for example, going to group law. This is where you find a lot of discussions about intellectual property, and they try to go for the nitty-gritty details about it. Recently closed also because of security concerns. If you want to read about compliance in general and you are developing software, I recommend the open source license compendium. It's very practical. And the good thing is that you have a target license that you're using, and you can actually start learning how it goes. I like it.
We're from them.
Ah, okay.
But we're not telecom, we're working with the telecom on this.
Perfect. I actually use it.
Very good.
And so we go to the quiz time. And on a quiz time, I actually invite you guys to go into a compliance session to see how easy or how difficult it is to actually determine the license. And I'm not using any tools, I'm just really using your own whiz and your own capacity to go to the internet and try to find information. So we'll be putting some of the components that you usually cross around every day, and we are trying to go the reasons why they are used this way. So the first one is MySQL. Everyone here in this room uses MySQL. But I mean, what are the implications that, no, they don't use MySQL, Postgre, I imagine. But there are some implications when people think that MySQL can be used for free software development. Is that they also have a lot of license conditions behind them. And their interpretation of GPL might not really be the one that we usually have. So that's the main difference. And I also have a few more quizzes there, but I don't think we have enough time. But basically, I just really wanted to give you some other examples like Mapfish, where they try to, for example, they promote it as BSD, and it is indeed, but one of the components is not. And it's commercial. So compliance is not really so clear most of the times. They require a lot of analysis and effort. Even though we try to have the licenses all very well defined and logical, the truth is that there are a lot of nuances. And that's my session for today. If you have any questions, I'm here to help.
Are there any methods to sign on an SPDX file to ensure to make it in a web of trust? So
yes, there is a checksum that you can put for the whole package. It's a SHA-1 hash that you can use, and this way it can't change. I mean, people say that it can be broken, but for a file, I think that there are no security issues on that perspective. Yes?
Does SPDX also wish to include unofficial licenses like the LAGPL, which is constructed by adding the LGPL clause to the AGPL? Because it's an unofficial license because the free software organization has to have time to make it. And some projects are using it, like web libraries, for example.
So my recommendation...
Already? It won't work. We should talk about that.
So
it's been an ongoing discussion, and it's really annoying because I have like a web library that I can't decide which license to use as the LAGPL. It isn't sure.
Yeah, I know we need one and we need to work on it, but just using the exception from the lesser GPL won't work for various reasons. We should talk about it.
yes.
I have some questions. You mentioned in your presentation that basically split code or code that you take from the internet that are basically very small or not as significant contributions, you should check the license. But if I'm telling you read the convention for copyright and author rights, basically it should be a significant contribution to the author. So did you analyze which license should really apply for such kind of code or meta code?
So that's the problem. You said it yourself, a significant amount of code. And what's a significant amount of code? I mean, how can we measure it? It can be one line, for example, if it's brilliant, or it can be 50 lines, I don't really know. And I'm actually on the snippets, most of the times you don't find licenses attributed to them. Perhaps a CCA, a Common Commons, a Creative Commons. But you don't find the license, you find the people that created that code. So what we try to do is try to get in contact with the person, discover if the person was actually the original author of the code, and if not, we just move on to the person from where he copied, if he remembers, or then we try to see some other strategy.
I'm just wondering if you're creating another route, because basically author rights is automatic, easy to use for a new one, for a new account, like face of your authors. But on the other hand, if you start to be very picky on each contribution, I mean, like 2 lines of pseudocode, if you look at ipso, for example, a lot of people took the ipso from the Linux kernel because it's well done. But basically, this one is not really GPL because it's just an extraction of it, but it's just a very slight distribution.
Exactly. There are no fixed rules from my perspective.
It's not basically limiting the way that you use it software.
From what I see in real world, you can't really apply a fixed rule that fits every case. You really have to see the context. Say, for example, if it's automated code being output, it's a different situation than a small snippet. Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Oh shit.
So I am thrilled that people are all of a sudden filing in as I go to speak, but try to make as much room for everybody, because I want even more people to see me talk. So fill in as many seats as you can. I mean, I'm like feeling like I just got this huge high as I saw that crowd. Like as I went to the bathroom, there's crowds coming in to see me. I'm like, yay! But make as much space as you can. Fill in all the seats. Because it looks like we're getting tight, so make room for all. Now I'm getting nervous.
I know.
There were like 10 people. I was like, oh, nice friendly discussion kind of talk. Yeah.
If anyone has an open seat next to them, please raise your hand. If you have an open seat. Okay.
My brain is flipping back and forth to excitement that the room is just immediately filled up for me, and terror that the room is just immediately filled up for me.
Oh, this will be fun.
Yeah, okay, yeah. It was a surprise, is what it was.
Are there any more seats open next to people? Or okay, so we are full now.
Well, yeah, what we can do down the sides, so you can let people in for standing room. We could probably get like 8. We've been like about 6 or 7 more people in for standing room. Now, I'm all about enforcing the fire code when I'm not the speaker, and then when I'm the speaker, I'm like, let everybody in! Let them all in!
Start a fire.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start a fire, but only metaphorically. Yeah. Well, go send them this side. Come past me. Come on, let them in. They can go up this side. Yeah. Go to this side. Go out and stand along there.
Now we're good.
I'm supposed to be the guy that follows the rules of things like licenses and...
No, we were authorized to go to 1.1.
Yeah, 1.1. 110 people are allowed in the room. So if we have 110 people, that's the right number. So you want to introduce me?
No.
Okay, no.
We have a minute.
I'll introduce myself.
No, I'll
Oh, yeah,
introduce
you
you, but you have to wait for the time.
Oh, okay. I'm excited.
So now you just have to stand there so everybody can look at you.
Mina, are you ready? Okay.
You could restart the conversation about how to properly pronounce your last name.
Well, I think that we can probably start now. So, I'm sorry, we're full.
One more. Let one more in. Come on, Tom. You can stand on this side. Go on. You can come around me. Go on that side.
Thanks.
Not really good.
Yeah, go to this side.
It's a very squishy fold.
Okay, so now I'm going to.
All right. You're right. You're right.
Right now we're full.
I need to stop. I need to stop bending over.
I did. And now I'll hold the door shut.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce to you the executive director.